Hello, Irish fans, and welcome to another edition of Dome and Domer as we enter our 17th year for this podcast. I, I gotta believe we're the oldest on the planet. Who else was doing Notre Dame football podcast before 2006? So I'm not going to argue we're the best. We're just the oldest.
Podcasting wasn't even really a thing back then.
Exactly. Yeah. There definitely was no video. Sully and I were just doing MP3s, through the WSBT studios and pushing them up. But in any event, that's a long time.
And what a fine job you've done of monetizing this property, Mike.
Yeah, oh yeah, there you go. Well, part of the reason we're going to video is because I got to recapture the cost to just do this anymore. So I got to share the story really quick. I just happened to have a big, huge presentation yesterday with Ohio State. So I log into the Zoom call and, of course, had to have a little fun with it. And so that's me with my big, huge logo, if you can see it. Right. And then these little looks on everybody's faces as they logged in. Like, did this guy really just do that?
That's beautiful.
Yeah. So in any event, they were good sports about it. I get to give them credit. They had some fun with it. They were teasing me like, hey, Mike, at least we didn't do the call on Monday after the game.
Well, I just hope they look like that Saturday at midnight.
Yeah, that would be a great sign.
Indeed.
All right, well, let's kick into that. Ed, I think one of the things that, at least in my mind, I personally believe that there's two predictions that are diametrically opposed to each other. Notre Dame being number 5 in the nation, and then Notre Dame being a 17.5-point underdog. Which side of the fence are you on with those two predictions? Or do you think that they're both true?
I think probably. Well, let me try and answer it this way. I think there's a lot of factors that play into that. One of them is Notre Dame's performance in big games over the last 10 or 12 years. And so there's like a hangover effect going back to 2012 from Alabama, going back to, 20 years ago against Ohio State, it's just that's part of it. I think a second piece of this is that sort of if you were to ask sort of the casual sort of fan out there what they know about this Notre Dame football team, they know that they have a new coach and they know they have a new quarterback. And I think that odds makers sort of probably put overemphasis on those two factors, whereas the people that are listening to this podcast know, and the three of us know, that the rest of the team, the rest of the depth chart is pretty loaded with experience and talent and people who've played in big games and some pretty decent, certainly the front seven on defense and certainly the offensive line and the tight end and there's those are not new players at all, and they're kind of known quantities, and we know that they're very good. So I think that's another piece of this. I think a third piece of this is that you always are sort of looking at the last thing that you saw with your own eyes, and Ohio State in their bowl game was. They were dynamic. I mean, I don't know how much they threw for, but their receivers.
I was like almost 600 yards, I think.
Right. And their quarterback was excellent. And of course, he's back. And the last thing people saw when Notre Dame played in a bowl game was the second half of the game against Oklahoma State, which was not inspiring and not awe-inspiring by any stretch. So I think if you put all those things into the soup, you get the 17-point underdog piece. But I think that the people who have us preseason 5, I'm not quite sure how we got there, to tell you the truth, because there's a lot of others who see us just outside the top 10 or I'm not quite sure where that comes from. I think maybe that comes a little bit from the fact that that will probably this will probably be that we get Clemson at home, that USC is still kind of rebuilding. There's kind of like this sort of idea that the only people that have a tough schedule are people who play in the SEC, period. And maybe it's more of a commentary on the other teams than it is really on Notre Dame. But I think you also have to tip your hat a little bit to Brian Kelly and say Notre Dame is preseason 5 because of the success of the program over the last 4 or 5 years. I mean, we've been in the playoff and have finished, in the top 10 solidly. For several years in a row. So I think you mix all that kind of stuff together. I'm sure that Mike Coffey will commit Harry Carey on air anytime that I mention anything positive about Brian Kelly. But
I was going to say, I don't have to do anything because you're not the boss of me. So
but these are his players
Yeah.
that he recruited. And
Well, I mean, I think you're right. And 5 years in a row, 10 wins. There's nothing wrong with that. I mean, I think Brian Kelly proved that he's a guy that'll beat who he's supposed to beat. I think the knock on him was you just didn't win enough of the other games, and that's fair criticism. And for whatever reason, we'll
Did you
find
say enough
out.
or any?
Yeah, right. Well, Coffee, what are your? I'm kind of curious your thoughts on this game for the Marcus Freeman era. How much does it matter? Where's this going to go? What do you think? What the impact do you think is going to be Saturday night because of him being in his first full game as a head coach with at least some time behind him?
I think one of the few advantages you're going to get from being a 17-point underdog is that if God forbid they end up losing by 3 or 4 scores, well, that's kind of what was supposed to happen. This is an Ohio State team that is loaded on offense. They have 3 Heisman Trophy candidates on the offensive side of the ball. And as you said, threw for millions upon millions of yards. And we're supposed to get spanked. Now, I don't believe we will. I think the game's going to be a lot closer. I think if Notre Dame ends anything better than like a 14-point loss is going to be great, at least short term for Notre Dame. Notre Dame goes in there and loses like it's a 7-point game in the fourth quarter, and Ohio State scores 1 or 2 touchdowns because the defense is just completely gassed trying to keep up with all these guys. Well, that's one thing that can be taken as a positive because, hey, they're already doing better than the pundits thought they would do. Realistically, this is just one game. I mean, it's really tough when it's against a number 2 team in the nation at their place. I really wish the Marshall and Ohio State games had been flipped because I would have liked to see him make his debut at home against a very beatable team, then worry about going to Ohio State. But I think right now, Marcus Freeman hopefully has a very long coaching career ahead of him at Notre Dame. This is going to be one game that may tell us some things, but as far as overarching, oh, he's going to be this, he's going to be that, I am going to work very hard not to try to make those kind of proclamations because I don't think they're valid.
Yeah, I would agree with you there. And I'm curious if you agree with me this. I kind of feel, look, every offensive coordinator scripts like the first 20 plays. I mean, it's just a given nowadays. You kind of go with what you're trying to set up in those first couple series. It's not going to surprise me at all if 15 of the first 20 plays are running plays from Notre Dame. As much as Marcus Freeman was saying, hey, we got to stop the run, I think the other side of that is you got to run the football because with a guy like Buckner having his first start on the road in an environment like this, I just don't see us coming out and slinging it all over the field. I kind of think that, yeah, there might be 10 running plays, 10 throwing plays, but 5 of those throwing plays are going to be Buckner running the football out of a throwing set. So what do you think? Am I wrong about that, or what do you anticipate Notre Dame coming out of the block is?
Yeah, I'm not sure, but I think that sort of what I've noticed in the past is games that Notre Dame has been successful running the ball. Sort of Tommy started the game sort of throwing to set up the run. In other words, giving his quarterbacks some confidence and sort of getting the defense to have to think about both, as opposed to just letting them kind of load up right away and fight fire with fire. So, I don't know. I mean, I think that it sends a message to your football team when you talk all preseason and basically since the spring, that the playbook is wide open with Tyler Buckner, that he's your guy, that he's your quarterback. And then you kind of script a sort of a conservative start when you're telling your team, we need to start fast. We need to start fast. Those 2 things don't necessarily jive. So I could see, I could see them taking a shot here or there. I mean, I think that, it's crazy not to try and find, Michael Mayer in a seam or try to get him, if you see a one-on-one matchup. I have to imagine that while they script, they also build things into the script where Buckner can check into things based on looks that he has. And I think that Ohio State will understandably come out, daring him to sort of beat them over the top. And I think that, you can also, turn that into a big play early. So I hope there's no sort of preconceived notion about, this is because those plans are always great until the game starts and you get hit in the mouth and you suddenly
Yeah.
get a feel for it, right? So
Yeah.
I can see scripting the first series or the first couple series or whatever, but I think Tommy Rees is smart enough to know that it's also going to be based on what he sees. And I may be completely wrong. You know, it might be just like, we're going to do this and we're going to see how it goes, and hopefully we're not too far behind when that script runs out. You know?
Well, I think you're right about. I mean, look, Coffee. I'm sure there's some checks where if they see Mayer in a one-on-one where he's not going to be doubled up, maybe they do go to him. There's going to be some of that, I'm sure. But I'm kind of curious, Coffee. What are your thoughts on Buckner being named the starter? Are we going to see Pine? Is there anything behind that? Do you think there's any reasoning as to why it's Buckner other than the fact that he's the guy?
Well, I think he has more experience, obviously, but I think also if you looked at the way the offense was able to move the ball when he played last year, there was so much more flexibility, so much more ability to get to be multidimensional. You don't want the defense thinking almost every play, okay, it's going to be a pass, it's going to be a pass. That's what happened in the second half of the Fiesta Bowl, and I was really kind of hoping to see Tyler Buckner in there to give us a little bit more of a look. You put Tyler Buckner in there, the linebackers can't immediately say, okay, I'm going to rush because I've got guys behind me who can handle the pass. If they have to account for his feet, if they have to allow for the fact that if he gets out of containment, he can pick up a lot of yards, that is only going to help this offense. I was really glad that they made that decision early to say, okay, Tyler Buckner is going to get the #1 reps, and he's going to get it early in camp to make sure that when we go to Ohio State, he's going to be ready to go. Now, if he doesn't perform well, something happens, and they have to go to Pine, okay, well, Buckner's been given his chance his time to shine. Then you see what Drew Pine can do. Maybe you see what Steve Angeli can do. But I think establishing a hierarchy from the beginning is very, very important, because you want to make sure that the rest of the team knows who the leader is. That's Tyler Buckner. If for whatever reason he can't get the job done after he's been given a chance to do it, okay, if they got to move on, they have to move on. But they made a decision from the get-go, establish the hierarchy, and they will work through it.
Yeah, no, I think you're right about that. You know, Ed, I thought you made a good point earlier just about, you know, if you're a fan of Notre Dame, you kind of do know the other talent that we have on the team, and most people that are casual observers aren't going to know that. There are some concerns, though, at DB, just in terms of us matching up with them and the elite wide receivers that they got. Do you think that's going to play out? Or do you think there's concern there? Or do you think we're going to be kind of a bend but don't break, and, you know, we're going to make them earn it with dink and dumps the whole entire game?
You know, I don't know, but that's certainly how I would play it, right? I mean, you've got, you know, we need sort of a good old fashioned kind of, you know, Bob Diaco sort of approach, because, you know, big plays are game wreckers, and they create momentum and they create confidence for the other team. To me, the biggest thing is third down. It seems when we have success as a defense, we play well on third down and we get off the field, or at least more than 50% of the time. You know, we're forcing a fourth down decision by the other team. So, listen, Cam Hart's a big dude. Clarence Lewis is a pretty big dude. You know, Tariq Bracy, by all accounts, is playing well. Certainly has a lot of experience. I think that helps. Maybe there are some things that they can do. It's a relatively young wide receiving core for Ohio State.
Yeah, that's true.
Maybe, right. And of course, you know, the best way to help those guys out is to make the quarterback uncomfortable, you know, is to get to him, or, you know, mix up some pressures. You know, Foskey has to have a huge game. He has to be a real problem. You know, they've got a couple very young running backs. You know, maybe they'll miss an assignment. Not everybody is Kyron Williams when it comes to pass pro. So, you know, it's got to be a real team effort. But you're right. Is it the strength of the defense? You know, no. But between Hart, Bracy, Joseph, you know, those are guys that have played an awful lot of football. And you just hope that experience sort of helps them avoid the big play, kind of keep the ball in front of them on third downs, and make some plays on third down. Notre Dame's going to have to score minimum 4 touchdowns to win, right? I think absolute minimum, probably 5 or 6. So you can't expect sort of some kind of a crazy sort of dominating performance from the defense. But what you can do, is if their chunk plays, third downs are kept sort of reasonable, then that's a formula that I think can keep Notre Dame around for 3.5, 4 quarters.
Yeah, Coffee. Notre Dame traditionally in big, huge games like this has kind of started out a little flat-footed, at least historically over the last 20 years. That wasn't the case in the Fiesta Bowl last year. Do you think that carries over? I mean, do you think is Marcus Freeman the kind of guy that generates that much energy that we come out in the first quarter and maybe at the end of the first quarter it's a different story than what people are expecting?
You can't afford to be analytical as Notre Dame's head coach. I mean, yeah, analysis factors into it, but you can't approach games like business trips and stuff like. I mean, to an extent. I think there has to be some emotion because everyone Notre Dame plays is going to have emotion. This is a big game. You're either playing in a huge game on national television, or you've got a team that doesn't usually come to South Bend and they're here, they're fired up, they're ready to go. If you come out clinically and say, okay, we're going to put our heads down and we're going to do, it's not going to work. You have to have an energy. You have to be able to say, we are going to come out and we're going to attack and we are going to match you as far as just, I know I keep using the word energy, but we are going to match you in enthusiasm. We're going to match you just in intensity and power, and we're just going to take it to you. If Notre Dame goes into Ohio State and they're intimidated at all, or say, well, we're going to be unemotional. You got to be emotional. I mean, granted, you don't want the emotion to be fear, but there's no chance that's going to happen. Notre Dame's going to go in there, I think, and I think they're going to leave it all on the field. Which again, I'm a cliche machine today, but I think they're energized. I think they're fired up. I think the fact that no one is giving them a chance is really pissing them off. And I could see a very energized performance. And like I said, I am going to rate this game in the broader picture by what the score is at the end of the third quarter. Because if we get into the fourth quarter, as I said before, and 45 minutes of trying to cover 3 Heisman Trophy winners just has the defense burned out. I mean, how that's going to happen. I think Marcus Freeman needs another 1 or 2 years of the kind of recruiting classes he's bringing in to get the kind of depth where we can be confident that won't be a problem.
Yep.
So if we go into the fourth quarter and it's, let's say, 24-17 or 24-21 or something like that, I am going to deem this game to be incredibly successful because that tells me Notre Dame was able to match the other team's intensity. They had a good game plan. And either they were able, as Ed said, they were able to limit the potential of Ohio State's offense, or they were able to put together good offensive drives of their own, 6-7 minute drives that just chew up clock and keep those Heisman Trophy candidates off the field.
Yeah, no, I think they will. I think there's going to be some great emotion, and I think he's going to have them ready to play coming especially in that environment. It's going to be intense. All right, Ed, I'll let you start first in terms of predictions, but with your prediction, give me what you think Buckner's going to end up doing stat-wise.
Oh, gosh. One thing about the first game of the year is there's a lot of, you just don't know. I mean, one of the things that we haven't talked about that does sort of interests me is special teams. We always sort of don't.
Well, the transfer portal helped us there.
Well, we hope. We're not sure.
True.
We lost some things. It sounds like it's really encouraging if we've got somebody who could put the ball off the tee into the end zone 80% of the time, which I read somewhere. I mean, that's a big thing. If you make Ohio State start on their own 25 every time, that's important. Of course, that's assume that we're kicking off every so often. And I think, punting will be important. If they come out fired up and kind of crack our code for the first couple of series before Buckner kind of gets into a groove, you need to really sort of, you gotta, keep them. Obviously they have talent all over the field, right? So they're going to have good returners. They're going to have, good special teams play. So I think special teams is really important because if it comes down to a kick or two, which of course we all hope it does, that's a little bit of a wild card, right? I do like the fact that the kid that's going to place kick for us has place kicked in football games before, in college football games before. You know, he's kind of he's been around the block. Now, granted, it wasn't at this level with this kind of pressure on, you know, national television on a Saturday night, but still, I think game pressure is game pressure to a certain extent for specialists, and I'm glad he's had some. So I'm avoiding your question. You know, listen, I'm kind of, I really agree with Mike Coffey on this. I think if Tyler Buchner comes out and looks like a college quarterback, you know, doesn't look like a deer in the headlights, you know, throws a nice ball, doesn't appear to be scattershot in terms of his you know, his throws, you know, protects the ball, you know, doesn't put himself, he's got to be smart too. He can't put himself, you know, subject himself to just a lot of big hits. You know, he's got to play like a guy who wants to play the whole season, you know, not like a guy who's just, you know, running around like Johnny Manziel out there. Although I would take that, I guess, for Saturday night. So I'll say Buckner's going to be, you know, 20 for 34, you know, with 2 touchdowns and just 1 interception. But I'm going to say that he's going to throw for over 300 yards, because I think the thing that he'll do is he'll create some plays. So his accuracy, I think, will still be something that needs to be worked on. But I think that those 20 completions will have a pretty high average play statistic. You know, I'd love to say that Notre Dame can make this a game. I think that Coffey probably hits it right, like where we will play with a high level of energy and intensity, and just sort of their sort of athletic advantages, especially you know, outside the lines or outside the hashes, will kind of get to us finally, you know, in the fourth quarter, and we'll blow a couple plays, or we'll blow a coverage, or somebody will just run right past us. So I'm going to say, you know, 35. I'm going to say 35-26, but that we're not completely bummed out Sunday morning at all.
Yeah, there you go. Coffee, what do you think?
I've got 31-28 in our site prediction contest. I've been kind of noodling that over the last couple of days. On the Notre Dame side, I might be willing to go down to 24. I think Tyler Buchner is going to do relatively well. I could see him, like, just being the inexperienced guy that he is. I could see him throwing like a fourth quarter pick that might keep us from a win. I hate to kind of put all that on his shoulders. I'm very much curious to see what he's going to look like given like a starting position and a full off season of reps. But I think I'm 31-28 Ohio State. I'm going to stick with that.
I'll take that all day long.
Oh, absolutely.
If we get that. Yeah, I've got a 38-28, and I think there's going to be some sort of controversial play too that's going to go against us, and so I think that'll help to justify that 10-point. Yeah, there's a prediction.
Let's
so I'll be looking for that. I'll text you guys as soon as it happens. You'll get a text from me. That's the play I'm talking about.
That's when we know Notre Dame football is back, when we spend the next show talking about the refs the whole time. I love it.
Won't that be?
I think he's going to play well. I do. I saw his press conference. I thought he handled himself pretty well. I liked what he said. I don't listen to music. You know, I just get out there and I'm calm. I'm thinking about the game. I don't like to be distracted with earphones on and music blaring in my ears. But I agree with you, Coffee. I think it's just a big, huge ask for a guy to go on the road, his first collegiate start, and for something not to go wrong. You're going to run into that. I think he's going to throw a pick. But I think he's going to probably be more like 220 yards in the air. But I think he might have, 75 to 90 yards running the football. And I think that'll be something that keeps us tight in the game. But, yeah, I think 38-28 is what we're going to be looking at when it's all said and done. A little bit too much to overcome in that environment. And of course, some sort of controversial call, which I'll predict. But anyways, let's hope it doesn't come out of that. I'd love to have a game show on Monday and not bring up the refs once. And hopefully talking about a Notre Dame win, that'd be even better.
I think what's also going to be very interesting, which we haven't talked about at all, is is that, there will be at least probably a couple pretty important in-game decisions that Marcus Freeman is going to have to make. And, we've talked about this before, how he sort of looked like a fish out of water on the sidelines a little bit in the Oklahoma State game. He's obviously more comfortable being the head football coach at Notre Dame now, but, he's going from the frying pan into the fryer. So, or from the, whatever that stupid cliche is. He's going from the frying pan into the fire. Excuse me. Yeah. There we go. And so this is a big deal, because these games tend to have some, in the same way that they have some controversial calls, they also have some pretty important decisions made by head coaches. And we'll see how prepared he is and how ready he is, because all eyes are going to be on him. This is, I mean, besides all the Ohio State stuff, I mean, he is, in a way, it's really good, I think, for his players. Mike, I think, sort of alluded to this, right? He is sucking up all the oxygen in the room when it comes to sort of the media attention for this game.
Yeah, which is
the
great.
Features, right? The features are all about him, the Ohio State connections, all that stuff. And that's good, right? Because people aren't obsessing about, they're not obsessing about the guys that are actually going to play the game. They're obsessing about the young, sexy new head coach. So that's good. Now let's see what he does when there's a critical moment in the game. Yep,
no doubt. All right, let's hope for a miracle, and we'll see something something we haven't seen in a while. That probably would be the biggest win in the last 20 years. I'm trying to think this through, like what other win would be bigger, but probably in the last 20 years, this is it. On the road, number 2, 17.5 down. I don't know.
I'd go back further. I think you can make a
93. Texas A&M in the bowl game. I'd probably not even.
I don't know about that.
It's, when you have, I mean, I think like Mike Coffey said, I mean, it's the point spread that really makes this the potential
for sure.
Right. I mean, this isn't Notre Dame, Florida State. This isn't Notre Dame. USC 1 and 2 at the end of the year. This isn't even Notre Dame, Miami in '88. I mean, this is a little different, right? Now again, you kicked off the show saying the right thing. Like, how is this possible if Notre Dame's preseason number 5? So I guess that tempers it a little bit. But certainly post Holtz, this will be the biggest victory for
I would agree.
Football,
I think so.
I think. Yeah. All
right, great. We'll leave it there. You've been listening to Dumb and Domer, the oldest Notre Dame football podcast on the internet. For Ed Jordanek and Mike Coffey, I'm Mike Brammer. Thanks for listening.